Keep Austin adventurous forever seems to be what people are feeling about the Robotaxi situation. And some people don't love how adventurous it feels. But although this is a Rivian shirt, we're talking about Tesla today specifically. Though Waymo and Zoox, they're all in the Robotaxi fleet and maybe Rivian eventually. But this is the Robotaxi you were promised, and this is the Robotaxi we're getting, at least for now. Actually, the first one pictured there is the Tesla Cybercab, unveiled last October. It was originally supposed to be in August, but unveiled in last October. And that'll eventually be, I'm sure, the main fleet robotaxi per se. But for now, Tesla is using the Tesla Model Y. And that actually makes perfect sense. And that is actually what has been spotted recently. Shout out to Terrapin Terpene, whose post has now seen like 22 million views, of a video of two Tesla Model Ys driving by with Robotaxi, of course, kind of stenciled or painted or wrapped or something on the side of one of them, with apparently no one in the driver's seat. Of course, Sawyer Merritt retweeted it, and Tesla retweeted that. So, Tesla quoted, "This is the same car you can currently buy, BTW." So as you can tell, these spottings, which isn't a word, but I'm going to use it anyways, they've gotten huge attention recently. While Tesla is still only listed as testing on the austintexas.gov website, that naturally allows for the spottings to continue. We'll see more and more of these, I'm sure, in the coming weeks as they prepare for some inevitable launch of some kind. As you can see on the website here, Waymo is saying phase deployment, so they're actually deployed and useful, and you can summon a Waymo anywhere in Austin. Well, actually not anywhere, but in certain areas in Austin where Waymo operates. But then further down the list, you see Tesla, which says testing phase, and Zoox, by the way, which also says testing phase. And they are obviously competing with Waymo, or they will once they are in deployment phase. Not really sure how immediately this website is updated. Being a government website, it's probably a bit clunky, but I'm guessing they're probably fairly on top of it because it's a big news deal when Tesla will switch from testing to deployment. Not sure if there's any intermediary stages. I think it probably is just testing, then deployment. But yes, Tesla is aiming to compete with Waymo. And this is a bit different because Waymo uses, well, the outgoing Jaguar I-Pace with many, many added sensors. It's clearly an I-Pace, but it's also clearly a Waymo, as you can tell by all of the various added LiDAR, radar cameras. It's a full suite of every bit of data you could possibly want from a self-driving car. And they're actually quite functional. I mean, very, very rarely do we hear of a Waymo having some sort of issue. They are largely, well, completely self-driving with the exception of, I mean, there is someone like that can remote in and, intervene anytime they need to, which is awesome. And that's probably what I think Tesla will need to also allow in the Model Ys that they're putting out in their robotaxi fleet. And like I said, Model Y, just an existing Model Y. There is no added sensors, no LiDAR, which is somewhat controversial actually, because, well, there's been recent tests showing LiDAR does do better than just pure cameras in certain scenarios, but then in other ones it doesn't really make a difference or can even be worse. So I don't know. I still don't know the actual solution of sensor fusion, how complicated that is, but also how great it is if they're properly fused. So I don't know the best route, but I do know, having used FSD myself for about 10,000 plus miles on hardware 4, it is so impressive, but it's also not without driver takeover, especially in inclement conditions, whether it's intense sun glare or if it's hard rain, even intense fog, though it does still do pretty well in most rain and even snow, which they don't actually get down there, so that shouldn't be an issue. But still, I'm curious to see if once this rolls out, how reliable will they be? And will they have remote people operating them like we saw remote people operating the robots at the We Robot event that Tesla unveiled the Cybercab in? Or will these truly be pretty much hands-off and then, someone remotes in when they absolutely need to? And then how does that trigger process work? I can't wait to ride in one of these to try it out. But Waymo's, like, fully kitted out, I've heard, I can't find any rock solid numbers, but I've heard anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000 to, build a Waymo. And versus the Model Y, which, let's just say 50 grand to keep it simple, although you can, of course, have them less. And then, of course, the cost to Tesla is possibly even, well, way less because it's at cost. That's a big difference. Cost does seem to be a big difference. And I'm curious if they will ever add more sensors for specific dedicated robotaxis. But as Elon said early on, they want the robotaxi fleet to be comprised of, well, maybe dedicated robotaxis, which I'm assuming would eventually be cybercabs, but also your Tesla. Model Y is like they're using now, but also maybe Model 3, even Cybertruck, Model S and X refresh, which will inevitably come at some point, plus whatever future cars they may have. The idea is that it should seamlessly integrate, and if that's the case, they can't really be adding all these extra sensors, but maybe they will in the future on ones that roll off the factory floor. I don't know. But yeah, the current cars slated to have just vision only, but also they do listen to audio cues, which is important for emergency vehicles. But I'm wondering if there's even like a way where a robotaxi or Model Y without a driver in it rolls up to a curb, slow moving traffic, and someone yells, runs after it saying taxi. Will they have a new catchword like not Siri, but something else? I don't know. That'd be really funny, like "Hey Robo" or I don't know. If you have an idea what a funny catchword would be, I'm really curious. But it'd be interesting if the car was listening for people to yell after it, not just wave their hands frantically. Because yes, it could see them, but how will it know that you're trying to get your attention? Or maybe you climb out, close the door, realize, oh crap, I left my backpack, which maybe has my phone, running after it saying stop. Will it stop? Or will that freak it out if, other people who are not you are trying to mess with it, like we've seen people messing with Waymos recently? I don't really know. But on the subject of the Cybercab, it's still supposedly planned for 2026, although Tesla has run into issues with trademarking the names for Cybercab and Robotaxi. At least that's what I've heard. But that's possibly because of the omission of Tesla in front of those names. People have pointed out, like, well, how did Autopilot pass the test? Well, that's because it's Tesla Autopilot. So maybe if it was Tesla Cybercab or Tesla Robotaxi, it would be different. But because I'm guessing they're trying to trademark just the word itself by itself, they're having issues. Ironically, with Cybercab, I think it's because of aftermarket companies making stuff for Cybertrucks have thrown cyber in front of everything. So now Tesla's perhaps having issues getting a hold of some of those words that maybe they thought would be easy for themselves. I don't really know. But we'll see if these trademark issues also cause any sort of delays. But speaking of delays, I guess let's talk about the launch date, which does, well, originally I think with the We Robot event, he said June, which it is June. I was so surprised if it was going to be early June. I'm going to still be surprised if it is June at all, but hey, could be surprised. End of June still has a couple weeks away, and they could be close to or on the verge of some sort of deployment, which could technically be like super minor scale and would probably still count for something, right? Like Waymo can't deliver every single place in Austin, so it's not like they have full Austin coverage. I mean, originally Elon said 2020, and then I think 2022, maybe 2023, 2024. It's all slipping, but hey, they're making progress. So Elon's followed up with saying maybe June 22nd. I'm not really sure where that date came from, but Elon said they're being super paranoid about safety, which could move the launch date. So if even he thinks that's optimistic, I really don't know if it'll be done by then. But it'll be interesting if it works out. But then Elon followed up with a birthday wish, saying that by June 28th, the cars may be able to drive themselves from the factory directly to your home. Now, of course, that would work really anywhere within Austin city limits without burning too much range, but there is definitely going to be a perimeter limitation on that because, well, the cars have a certain amount of range. They probably don't leave the factory completely full, and they don't have a way to charge themselves yet. So, yes, we don't have the inductive charging situation that Cybercab's supposed to have at some point. So, I don't know what the limit will be or how you'll be able to maybe select that through the app. That'll be really interesting as we follow this story. But yeah, I guess technically he said the first Tesla that can drive itself from factory to home will do it on June 28th, which would be funny if he did that himself on his birthday, did some big publicity stunt saying he bought himself a Tesla. It came from the factory to his house or some house he was borrowing for this example, and that's how they would unveil it. That'd be cool. I'm down with that. But it does feel kind of poetic. Tesla back in the day used to have, home deliveries all the time. That's become increasingly, well, I guess decreasingly a thing. So you don't really see home delivery, although I think technically it still is kind of an option and maybe depends very case by case. But I mean, back in the day, you used to get your like Model S or Model X at home, which was so cool. And maybe this can bring it full circle. Of course, again, like back in the day, maybe slightly limited to your radius. But yeah, your car will be able to robotaxi itself to your house and then, in theory, become a robotaxi. Now, I'm curious on some aspects of this, specifically the customer car being a robotaxi, which, yes, I know maybe the launch date of June is going to be Tesla intended robotaxis, not customer owned, because I'm wondering what will be the situation of customers who take delivery. How will that agreement work with becoming robotaxi? How will the enforcement of keeping the car up to robotaxi standards be? We've seen Uber really slipping with what was considered a car not good enough for Uber. Now you call most Ubers and they're kind of terrible. Um, it'd be interesting to see, whether they allow aftermarket wheels or tires, even window tints, floor mats. There's a lot of things that could get into that area of legality. And like, what if something goes wrong? Who's at fault? It could fall to the blame of some aftermarket accessory that could be involved. Maybe even something that taps into it passively, like the sexy buttons. That'd be such a bummer for me. All this to say, we'll keep an eye on this. And we'll keep an eye on Zoox. And still keep an eye on Waymo, because this is all a fascinating industry to keep an eye on. And we'll see how it works with Tesla eventually petering out of the testing phase, as well as Zoox, and then the other markets they plan to expand in. It's all fascinating, and you'll hear all the news here. I'm curious how Waymo will handle this onslaught of new things. I know Waymo, of course, is working with integrating newer vehicles because, I mean, the I-Pace has been around for a while. It's an old car at this point. I feel like Waymo single-handedly has kept the Austrian-built Jaguars alive. So it's cool to see Zoox and, whatever Waymo does with the Zeekr partnership. It's cool to see where they head with their technology. But let us know what you guys think. Should we take bets at this point? I probably know which way I'd bet. History sometimes repeats itself, and Tesla deadlines do have a history. That's for sure. Thanks for watching.